Whereas I, Gregg Abbott, Governor of Texas, issued a disaster proclamation on March 13, 2020, certifying under Section 418.014 of the Texas Government Code that the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, poses an imminent threat of disaster for all counties in the state of Texas, and whereas in each subsequent month effective through today, I have renewed the disaster declaration for all Texas counties, and whereas I have issued executive orders and suspensions of Texas laws in response to COVID-19 aimed at protecting the health and safety of Texans and ensuring an effective response to this disaster, and whereas I issued Executive Order GA08 on March 19, 2020, mandating social distancing restrictions in accordance with guidelines promulgated by President Donald J. Trump and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and whereas I subsequently issued a series of superseding executive orders aiming to achieve the least restrictive means of combating the evolving threat to public health by adjusting social distancing restrictions while implementing a safe strategic plan to reopen Texas, and whereas, under Executive Order GA32, in effect since October 14, 2020, most establishments have been able to operate up to at least 75% of total occupancy, except in some areas with high hospitalizations as defined in that order, where most establishments have been able to operate up to at least 50% of total occupancy, and whereas I also issued Executive Order GA29 regarding the use of face coverings to control the spread of COVID-19 and a series of executive orders, most recently GA31, limiting certain medical surgeries and procedures, and whereas COVID-19 hospitalizations and the rate of new COVID-19 cases have steadily declined due to the millions of Texans who have voluntarily been vaccinated, many more who are otherwise immune, improved medical treatments for COVID-19 patients, abundant supplies of testing and personal protective equipment, and Texans' adherence to safe practices like social distancing, hand sanitizing, and use of face coverings. And whereas, in the Texas Disaster Act of 1975, the legislature charged the governor with the responsibility for meeting the dangers to the state and people presented by disasters under Section 418.011 of the Texas Government Code, and expressly granted the governor broad authority to fulfill that responsibility. And whereas, under Section 418.012, the governor may issue executive orders having the force and effect of law. Now, therefore, I, Gregg Abbott, Governor of Texas, by virtue of the power and authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the State of Texas, and in accordance with guidance from medical advisors, do hereby order the following on a statewide basis, effective at 12:01 a.m. on March 10, 2021. In all counties not in an area with high hospitalizations as defined below. A. There are no COVID-19 related operating limits for any business or other establishment. And B. Individuals are strongly encouraged to wear face coverings over the nose and mouth wherever it is not feasible to maintain 6 feet of social distancing from another person not in the same household, but no person may be required by any jurisdiction to wear or mandate the wearing of a face covering. Area with high hospitalizations means any trauma service area that has had 7 consecutive days in which the number of COVID-19 hospitalized patients as a percentage of the total hospital capacity exceeds 15%. Until such time as the trauma service area has 7 consecutive days in which the number of COVID-19 hospitalized patients as a percentage of total hospital capacity is 15% or less. A current list of areas with high hospitalizations will be maintained at www.dshs.texas.gov/GA3031. In any county located in an area with high hospitalizations as defined above, A. There are no state-imposed COVID-19 related operating limits for any business or other establishment. B. There is no state-imposed requirement to wear a face covering, and C. The county judge may use COVID-19 related mitigation strategies, provided however that business and other establishments may not be required to operate at less than 50% of total occupancy, with no operating limits allowed to be imposed for religious services, including those conducted in churches, congregations, and houses of worship, public and private schools, and institutions of higher education and child care services. No jurisdiction may impose confinement in jail as a penalty for violating any order issued in response to COVID-19, and no jurisdiction may impose a penalty of any kind for failure to wear a face covering or failure to mandate that customers or employees wear face coverings, except that a legally authorized official may act to enforce trespassing laws and remove violators at the request of a business establishment or other property owner. In providing or obtaining services, every person, including individuals, businesses, and other legal entities, is strongly encouraged to use good faith efforts and available resources to follow the Texas Department of State Health Services health recommendations found at www.dshs.texas.gov/coronavirus. Nothing in this executive order precludes businesses or other establishments from requiring employees or customers to follow additional hygiene measures, including the wearing of a face covering. Nursing homes, state-supported living centers, assisted living facilities, and long-term care facilities should follow guidance from the Texas Health and Human Services Commission regarding visitations and should follow infection control policies and practices set forth by HHSC, including minimizing the movement of staff between facilities whenever possible. Public schools may operate as provided by and under the minimum standard health protocols found in guidance issued by the Texas Education Agency. Private schools and institutions of higher education are encouraged to establish similar standards. County and municipal jails should follow guidance from the Texas Commission on Jail Standards regarding visitations. Executive Orders GA-17, GA-25, GA-29, and GA-31 are rescinded in their entirety. This executive order shall supersede any conflicting order issued by local officials in response to the COVID-19 disaster, but only to the extent that such a local order restricts services allowed by this executive order or allows gatherings restricted by this executive order. Pursuant to Section 418.016A of the Texas Government Code, I hereby suspend Sections 418.1015B and 418.108 of the Texas Government Code, Chapter 81, Subchapter E of the Texas Health and Safety Code, and any other relevant statutes. To the extent necessary to ensure that local officials do not impose restrictions in response to the COVID-19 disaster that are inconsistent with this executive order, provided that local officials may enforce this executive order as well as local restrictions that are consistent with this executive order. All existing state executive orders relating to COVID-19 are amended to eliminate confinement in jail as an available penalty for violating the executive order. To the extent any order issued by local officials in response to the COVID-19 disaster would allow confinement in jail as an available penalty for violating a COVID-19 related order, that order allowing confinement in jail is superseded. And I hereby suspend all relevant laws to the extent necessary to ensure that local officials do not confine people in jail for violating any executive order or local order issued in response to the COVID-19 disaster. This executive order supersedes Executive Orders GA-17, GA-25, GA-29, GA-31, and GA-32, but does not supersede Executive Orders GA-10 or GA-13. This executive order shall remain in effect and in full force unless it is modified, amended, rescinded, or superseded by the Governor. This executive order may also be amended by proclamation of the Governor. Given under my hand this, the 2nd day of March, 2021. Governor Gregg Abbott.